Okay, so I've got my rulers now, and we figured out that I don't know my right from my left. So let's change this to left and this to right. Okay, now we've got our base. Now we're going to have to figure out how to make the panel for the tennis shoe. Okay, so first thing you need to do is you need to get yourself two cardboard, well, at least one of your cardboard soles, so you can write on it, and the shape of whatever design you decided to use. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you what I use, the dimensions for these shoes, and I think if you use the same ratio to your size shoe, you shouldn't have a problem with this pattern. But this is for an 18-inch doll, so this would work for the Journey girls, your American girls. I think the Bitty Babies or something are also 18 inches or have the same size foot. Okay, so first thing you want to do is you want to measure down on the top of your shoe 1.25 inches. Okay, so once you have that 1.25 inches, draw a line and then make a line across. Okay, and the reason we're doing that is because we need to know how big to make our tongue piece, which is this piece right in here. Okay, so basically I measured down 1.25 inches, and I'm going to make my tongue piece. This is 2 7/8 across at the biggest point. And the reason and how I came up with that is I took my piece of paper and I wrapped it around my shoe top, and I went down to where my line was on each side. And that's how I got that 2 7/8 of an inch. And I gave myself my 1/4 inch tuck under that I'm going to need. And that's how you're going to know what the biggest point is you're going to need for your shoe tongue. Okay, so that's like 1.25 inches down. And then from side to side at the biggest point is 2 7/8. Okay, so once you have that, your total piece is, from top to bottom on this shoe tongue, is 3 1/8 of an inch. So it's from the bottom to the very top, it's 3 1/8. Okay, your widest point right here is 2 7/8. So once you're at your widest point, you want to measure up 3/4 of an inch and draw a line at that 3/4 of an inch mark on each side. And then across from that, it should be 2 inches straight across. Okay, and then you just shape it, and this is how you're going to get your tongue. This was my first tongue test. It's just something you're going to have to work with and try and get it the best you can. It took me a good 3-4 tries to get this tongue the way I wanted it, because you're going to have to make sure that when your tongue is on there, you've got enough for the doll to get her foot in there underneath. This tongue right here is also the same shape you would use if you're making a regular doll shoe. You're just going to take a piece of your paper and wrap it around like that, and that's going to get the base of your shoe pattern also. So that's like making pedal pushers, not pedal pushers, or slip-on loafers is what I'm trying to think of. Same technique. Okay, so now that you've got your tongue, you're going to have to ask yourself, well, how am I going to determine how big to make my panel for my tennis shoe top? The easiest way I can say to do that is to go to the very top of your tennis shoe base, your sole base, and go into this, give yourself a 5/8 of an inch mark, okay? And then you take your measuring tape and measure all the way around your shoe base to that 5/8 of an inch mark, and leave yourself 5/8 of an inch opening. And in my case, that's 6 3/4 inch around my shoe base, and that's exactly what I used, 6 3/4 inch, because I'm going to lose a 1/4 inch on this side and this side for seam allowances. Okay, Now, when I went from my tennis shoe, my basic tennis shoe, I just went 6 3/4 across, and then I went up about 2 and almost 1/4 inch up. It is 2 1/4 inches, and that makes your basic tennis shoe, because you're still going to lose 1/4 inch on the top and 1/4 inch on the bottom when you sew on the top, and then you turn this under 1/4 inch. So I'm using 1/4 inch seams. So when you think, if you think you're making your, all you have to do the tie tops is just extend this up as big as you want your high tops. No, that's not true. It doesn't work that way, because you have to account for the size of your doll's calves. So what I did was I tried it the first time, just like I just told you I did, and went up straight from what I thought would work, and it did not work. I had to go back and readjust. So I took my doll shoe pattern, and I actually came out at least 1/2 inch, maybe 5/8 of an inch, and then I did my upswing for my high tops, and that's what allowed the high tops to fit better. Let me get the doll here. Okay, so here's the high top that the first height, I don't know if you, hope you can see this. The first high top that I made for this doll, I didn't have enough overlap on the shoe, and you could see the, this is just lace. I'm not going to use this shoe. This was just an example. But it came out over here like this, and I didn't have enough to cover it. So that's why I had to remake the pattern and go in further from the upswing on the bottom of the regular shoe for the high tops. But, you know, how much you want it to connect in the front is up to you. If you want a little bit more space so more of the tongue shows, it's up to you, but that's how I did it on the high tops. So that was it. Okay, so basically what you're doing is you're going to take your tongue, okay, you got that on there, and what you want with this is to come around enough, even with your seam allowances in there, to overlap your tongue will your panel will overlap the tongue of your tennis shoes, and that's what you're going to use. Okay, so now you've got that. You're going to cut out 2 of these pieces for each shoe, because you need a front and a back, and you're also going to cut out 2 pieces for each of the shoe on these, because you're going to have a front and a back. You don't have to use the same fabric on the inside as the outside. It's totally up to you whether you do or not. This one I made all the same fabric. Because this was just one of my test high tops. I used a white fabric on the inside, and the pink, I didn't care about this fabric, and it was just a test. So that's what I used this for, just as a test, to see if this was the right, the shoe would work correctly on the tennis shoes. This was when I didn't use a bigger size base than I did the inside sole, and you can tell how it sort of bows itself out, because I had to push it into the bottom to get it, whereas this one is more of a straight trim around the shoe. So we'll get, when we do that, I'll show you, you need the base to be a little bit bigger. Okay, so that's the body of your shoe. Now you're going to think about the high top tongue. Same thing with the tongue of your shoe. It's pretty much the same basic figuring out how you're going to do it. So basically what I did was I just lined it up on my shoe base, and I figured out when I added that 1/4 of an inch on the bottom, how tall do I want that to be on my on the high top. And then I lined this up under 1/4 of an inch also to make sure that when those connected that they'd be even on the top when I did that. So basically the high tops are 3 inches up. Okay, so the tongue also will be a little bit bigger than 3 inches. It'll be about, I would say that's 3 7/8 from top to bottom. Yep, 3 7/8, and then the high tops I went 3 inches, and then this is 6 3/4. And that was the high tops. So high top shoe panel, tongue, regular tennis shoe and tongue. Your soles, this is your inner sole only. You're going to make the shoe, and then you're going to determine the size of your outside base by waiting till you're done with assembling the glue on the bottom of the shoe. Okay, most tennis shoes are really cute only if they have a lot of the top stitching on them. So you're going to have to determine how you're going to do the top stitching. So what I did is I lined up my eyelets, and then I made myself a pattern, and then I did my top stitching by using a piece of, this was not the right one, this one here. Yeah, I lined it up with my curve, and I did my top stitching so I could not have any back stitching on these. So I did all my top stitching prior to sewing my piece together. So basically I would start with my piece like this. I would take my pattern, and I would top stitch it. I would line it up here. In fact, I would just take my pin this on, and then I would top stitch with the paper in place, and it gave me my alignment for how I was going to do my top stitching. So I would do my first one, and then my second one is just about 1/8 of an inch in from the second one, and then I just follow that line and make my second stitching. Okay, so you have to do the top stitching here first so you don't see the back stitching on the, but it's only around this area here, because you're going to do your final 2 top stitches with all of the pieces together. But it's just for pretty top stitching, like on the, where's the blue one? I'll show you on that. I added vinyl on this piece, and then I did a vinyl piece where I just put it in half like a regular tennis shoe, and I just sewed that up. So every time you do top stitching or you make up a design, it's always good if you make yourself a pattern, because you're going to need 2 of these, and if you don't make a pattern of what you did on the previous one, it's going to be hard for you to remember exactly the same dimensions. So it's easy if you just make a pattern, use it, and then on my next panel I'll use that also. Okay, so next I'm going to show you how to assemble your shoe. Okay, see you again.